Saget Missive 2, Saget Harder. Last year, I mailed a letter to the Seattle Times and 3 other news outlets. The contents of that letter, printed simply in a system font, were this. Okay, so here's the deal with Bob Saget's death. I can't exactly reveal how I know this. Pedos, Hollywood, it's tied in with that. The Clintons, they're deep into it and they have people killed. Their big guy in Hollywood right now, in procuring children, is Matthew McConaughey. Back in the day, it used to be Jack Warden. It was big with network TV people. That's how actors Charles Wagenheim and Victor Killian both ended up dead, beaten to death by burglars, supposedly, after appearing on the same episode of All in the Family. They talked. These people swapped children for child sex/pedophilia purposes. Epstein Maxwell are a part of that, and so was the death of JonBenet Ramsey. People who are a threat to expose it can find themselves dead or out of Hollywood. Saget himself indulged in that activity, and he said something to someone else, possibly Hillary Clinton or McConaughey, that indicated he was a threat to expose them. They got to him after the show and killed him by using his head as a golf ball. They smashed his head multiple times with a golf club. That's why he had those head injuries. I have to stay anonymous, thanks. The death of Bob Saget. That particular cover-up got foiled because a media outlet sent a reporter to do their own news account and the story got away from them. There was a flimsy piece published as online news to quell disputes about the narrative. The efforts by Saget's family to keep medical records from being released were to prevent further harm from coming to them after having been made to witness his torture and execution. There has been talk recently about the medical condition of Jamie Foxx and how he ended up that way. Talk about Oprah Winfrey, talk by Mel Gibson, talk by Ice Cube about gatekeepers who are supposedly up to something bad. The letter to the Seattle Times was taken seriously enough that a call went out to 347 people on April 1st, 2022. Among other annoyances, they were annoyed by the stylistic choices made by the leaker. The letter was not written by Jeremy Renner, though it would seem he took the blame for it, possibly to prevent other innocent people from getting hurt. This one, the one you're reading, was also not written by Jeremy Renner. People present at the ritualistic murder of Bob Saget on the property of George W. Bush included Bill Clinton, Hillary Clinton, Roger Clinton, Jimmy Carter, George W. Bush, Barack Obama, Matthew McConaughey, Will Smith, Meg Ryan, Julia Roberts, Harrison Ford, Eddie Murphy, and William Forsythe. Saget's family was also there, forced to watch while naked and being sexually abused with eels in a swimming pool, of all things. Attendees took turns hitting Saget's head and face with a golf club, and a vehicle was driven on his head by Roger Clinton to kill him, after which his body was hanged. Ryan acted in particularly poor taste. The initial news account of Saget's death upon the discovery of his body at his hotel stated that foul play was not suspected. He had been approached by Gilbert Gottfried after a show. Saget's offense seems to have been to threaten Hillary Clinton with McConaughey present regarding their illicit operations in rigging the 2020 U.S. presidential election. It would seem that it just isn't the case that electable Joe Biden honestly earned more votes than Barack Obama did in both 2008 and 2012. Saget, it turns out, was part of a leak of information above levels in which knowledge of 9/11 machinations was leaked to Saget, Norm Macdonald, Bernie Mac, and Gilbert Gottfried, all of whom ended up dying suddenly. Undisclosed cancer in the case of Macdonald and Gottfried. There is a historical event that's significant here. In 1777, a bicycle messenger in Leipzig, Prussia, now Germany, was struck by lightning, and the documents he was carrying revealed the existence of a clandestine group called the Illuminati, who were carrying out secret plots that took place over the course of decades. Now here's something they learned sometime after that. If you don't name the thing, it's harder to pin down. In 19th century Canada, they didn't call it the Family Compact, but Crusader William Lyon Mackenzie did. They learned how to make it harder for outsiders to identify them and define them and know what they do. These aren't dumb people here. They've been practicing the art of secret keeping for a long time. It's ultimately Freemasonry, and there are insiders who know that the House of Plantagenet changed English history to erase the existence of the historical King Arthur. They believe in maintaining influence across time and across society, so they perpetuate themselves in families across generations. Across society includes having people on opposite sides in a political conflict. The current incarnation, which has a firm grip on the United States, the United Kingdom, Canada, and the Netherlands, and others as well, including the new government in Ukraine, which took over in a coup in 2013, has been at their machinations since the reign of Queen Elizabeth I. That's over 400 years. The current British royal family is the top level, according along with the Clintons. Historian Anthony Sutton wrote a book about an American faction he discovered, the Order of the Skull and Bones at Yale, whose membership includes George W. Bush, his father George H.W. Bush, and his father Prescott Bush. Sutton's work is basically accurate. That group dates back to 1832. The American contingent was brought into integration with the European faction by Elihu Root, who served as Secretary of War and Secretary of State. Former New York State Governor Averell Harriman was a high-ranking member of the group who was a Yale Skull and Bonesman. Skull and Bonesmen founded both the American Historical Association as well as the American Economic Association to wield influence over what gets to be considered as official history or official economic thought. The University of California was founded by a Skull and Bonesman as well. At another point in the history of America, in 1927, film moguls Samuel Goldwyn and Louis B. Mayer killed their business associate Marcus Lowe because he objected to Goldwyn's creation, a system where Hollywood aspirants would agree to participate in child sex swapping and offer their children to the system, where they can participate in pedophilia with other people's children and only then get considered for film and later TV work. This is how Wikipedia describes Marcus Lowe's death. Though MGM was immediately successful, Lowe died in 1927 of a heart attack at the age of 57 at his country home in Glen Cove, New York. He was actually crushed to death under an iron bookcase by his associates. He was the first of many victims of the system. It also involves child actors being sexually accessible to adults, and this is what actor Corey Feldman was talking about. Feldman's story, along with that of actor Terry Crews, who was actually referring to Matthew McConaughey, was drowned out deliberately by a contrived flood of #MeToo stories, including those of actor Aziz Ansari, comedian Louis C.K., and writer-producer Dan Harmon. There has long been a central figure involved in organizing it and recruiting people. This function has been served by Milton Berle, Brian Keith, Jack Warden, his Crazy Like a Fox co-star John Rubenstein, Alec Baldwin, Will Smith, and currently Matthew McConaughey. Someone like Jason Sudeikis might make a suitable replacement in the future. This is likely what Ice Cube is referring to when he speaks of gatekeepers and secret things they shouldn't be doing. Membership comes from offering up children, yours or your family's in some cases. Hollywood is the kind of place where Norm Macdonald could pay $800+ for sex with a 15-year-old Brittany Snow when she was an actress on Guiding Light. It's also the kind of place where Guiding Light actor Grant Alexander had sex with his child co-star Hayden Panettiere, and the male co-stars of Full House had sex with the underage Olsen twins. This type of organized child sex has been integrated into this high-level world of worldly people. Basically, anyone who would have been part of Jeffrey Epstein's Lolita Express experience. Bill Clinton, Bill Gates, Prince Philip, that cohort. JonBenet Ramsey's death occurred at their 1996 Christmas party. She was killed by a male relative who was having sex with her. She had snapped and started punching him, and in response, he crushed her skull. Famous people like the Clintons, David Crosby, and Tom Hanks were there. Ramsey was personally recruited into that world by Bill Clinton. She had a sister who ended up as one of Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell's sex slaves and was eventually killed for threatening to talk. One repercussion of this particular incident is that it was discussed in public at some point afterwards at a hotel restaurant bar by actor William Forsythe, loud enough to be overheard and recorded by someone there who worked for the National Enquirer. This tape was then kept in their offices in World Trade Center Building 7, the third tower that fell on September 11, 2001, later that afternoon. The destruction of this tape, of Forsythe talking about the Ramsey murder, is the thing that necessitated the destruction of the towers, the entire act of terrorism in the first place, and the deaths of the innocent people who died that day. Forsyth is also the one responsible for the spate of people who placed financial bets against the airlines involved in 9/11 but didn't pick up on them. He talked about the opportunity and enough people took advantage that it drew suspicion. 9/11 has been one of the group's sensitive subjects, as it leads to objections from participants who agreed to join but were disturbed by the truths they learned, like actress Annie Wershing. Drug smuggling is another one. Threatening to talk or spilling secrets about illicit activity behind the scenes, these can get people killed. The SARS-CoV-2 pandemic was another project conducted secretly and deliberately by them that led to objections from within. Actor Clarence Gilliard Jr. was used as a test subject for the virus, which was generated in a lab in Wuhan, like people suspect, spread from the fish market as the medical reports suggest. The Hollywood portion of the system, Goldman's system from the 1920s, had killed over 780 people in secret as of October of last year, their deaths reported as suicides, heart attacks, unpublicized cancer, or something else. Older people are particularly susceptible, their deaths are less likely to be questioned. There are enough inroads of these people in police departments, not just the Hollywood part of these people, but the whole lot of them, that they can cover up the truth about deaths, especially in Los Angeles. In a place like Canada, you'll find police more likely to have been corrupted by the motorcycle gang Freemason component of them. There are enough inroads of these people in mainstream media outlets that a copy of the previous letter sent about Bob Saget's death, the one received by the Seattle Times around March 27 or so, was immediately passed on to these people, as I mentioned earlier. Lisa Marie Presley's death, shortly after the Golden Globes, was the result of a response to the threat sent out by the Clintons after the Saget Missive. There's a device they use that seems to be especially theirs. It's referred to as a joy buzzer. It's a small, simple plastic device that is held in one's palm with a ring like a joy buzzer, but it has two sharp needles that inject a deadly combination of substances, ketamine and cyanide. Slapped on someone hard enough, it penetrates the skin, injecting the two substances. The ketamine makes the victim/target disoriented and in need of sleep, and when they go to sleep, the cyanide takes effect and kills them. It's a slow-release fatal weapon, and those who wield one operate above the law. Presley confronted Matthew McConaughey with her displeasure about the Saget situation and was clapped with a joy buzzer for insolence. Clarence Gilliard Jr.'s death was administered with this method by Bill Clinton, as was Norm Macdonald's by George W. Bush. If it wasn't obvious already, Bill and Hillary Clinton kill people, in the ballpark of 500 at the latest estimate. For the rest of this missive, I'll use bullet points to loosely organize the stories, secrets of the business. In the case of actors Victor Killian and Charles Wagenheim, the two 88-year-old actors had guest roles on an episode of All in the Family in 1979. One of them approached actor Rob Reiner to see if they could get back in with the child sex system. Reiner was then tasked with killing the two men, which he did with actor Carol O'Connor present to make sure he did it. Both Killian and Wagenheim are listed as having been beaten to death by burglars in their Hollywood apartments. Both were killed before the episode aired. Actor William Holden's death was actually the result of his role as an enforcer going wrong. He was sent to kill Paul Lynde, but was overpowered, and Lynde killed him instead. Lynde was eventually shot and killed by Jack Warden. William Holden and actor George McDaniel, who passed away in January 2023 according to his IMDb profile, killed actor Jack Cassidy, father of David and Sean Cassidy, by setting him on fire. Cassidy had objected to his sons becoming part of the system. George McDaniel was an enforcer who killed somewhere around 100 people. He and Chips actor Larry Wilcox killed actor Peter Finch, who was becoming a threat during the promotion of Network.